Okay, so we're going to be doing this. I'm doing a new video on the topic of research just because the old one, I was going to reuse it and it was just outdated and there were too many things that I would have to explain for why it wasn't what it was supposed to be in any case. So you're just going to have to roll with this. And I realize this isn't exactly a great camera or anything like that, but we're going to have to make do. So, research. I'm going to try and keep this fast and to the point. The topics and this doesn't address people who are in crisis committees because those kind of topics can vary widely. So if you're doing the Illuminati or something like that, these kind of research techniques aren't going to help you. But this is the stuff that helped me when I was in graduate school, and so I think that that'll be useful now. The thing I want you to remember is that the topics that we're looking up and researching in the Model UN, and in this case I'm going to use the example of reintegrating child soldiers in conflict zones as our example. The topics that we're discussing in the Model UN have been debated and discussed and analyzed and studied by people far more knowledgeable than you or I about these topics. Some of them have been literally studying this for years. Sometimes it's groups of people getting together who've been studying this for years. And so the goal is not for you to try and rethink a new way to deal with this issue. The goal is for you to find as many studies that have been done on this issue of reintegrating soldiers, gather together as many recommendations or proposals that you can that have been made by others, and then make their proposals your own. Now, if you can tweak something in a particular way to make it new or interesting or whatever, feel free to do that. But understand that the base work, most of the work has already been done, and you trying to come up with your own proposal, like some new proposal, it's not going to be effective. Let the other people who've done the work do the work. Find their work, and that's what this is about. That's what research is about, is finding the work that others have done. Don't reinvent the wheel. So if you look on the paper that I have loaded up on Canvas, you'll see that I went through a series of Google searches. And so these are just Google search strategies to help you find things. Because doing research is kind of like digging for gold. Right? You keep digging and you dig and you dig, and then sometimes you hit a vein and you think maybe I got something. Turns out that it's not quite as good as you hope, so you go back and you dig some more and you dig some more until you hit a vein, until you hit gold, you hit something really good. So what you're going to see are a series of Google searches that I did, beginning with like obviously bad ones at the beginning and progressively better ones. And I want to explain what Google does when you enter terms into it so that you have an idea of what's actually going on. So as you can see, the first thing on the list, what I did was I put in child, soldiers, and United Nations in there. And I hit search. And there were over 26 million hits. Obviously, that's far too many. Now, if you look at the next one, it's child, soldiers, and United Nations. But what I did was I put United Nations in quotes. See, the search that I did before, it would look for any document that had the word child, soldiers, United, and Nations in it. And it doesn't matter what order, it doesn't matter. So if somebody was talking about a child whose father was a soldier who lived in a nation that was united, right, that would be in the hit, the original search. In the second search, right, when you put United Nations in quotation marks, now it's going to look for any document that has the word child, the word soldiers, and the phrase United Nations. And you can see that instantly we go from 26 million down to essentially 11 million hits right off the top. So, following that same reasoning, what I did is I put child soldiers in quotation marks, the United Nations in quotation marks, and boom, now you're down to 800,000 hits. Just by using the quotation marks, you can dramatically, you go from 26 million hits down to 800,000. Now, 800,000 is still a lot of hits, right? You still need to narrow down your search a lot, but it helps you understand how valuable those quotation marks can be. So since the topic is about reintegrating child soldiers, I entered into the search term reintegrating and then child soldiers United Nations. And now, boom, again, it dropped to 169,000. Like it's just dropping precipitously here just with the introduction of quotation marks. And then I took it a step further. I had reintegrating child soldiers in quotation marks and United Nations, and then it dropped down to under 3,000 hits. Again, still a whole lot of hits, right? You don't want to go through 3,000, almost 3,000 sites to see if you can find something useful. But what we've done is in just using quotations marks strategically and introducing new words, we're able to bring it down quite a bit. So now the next one's a little more complicated. If you look in the next search, I wrote the reintegrating child soldiers as a quote, right? United Nations as a quote, and then executive summary. Now, if you're wondering what's an executive summary, in most professional research, I don't want to say academic research because sometimes it's not academics, it's people who are working for the United Nations or UNICEF or somebody like that, so it's not like necessarily a professor doing it. It could be somebody, a diplomat. So, but in most professional research, what they'll do is they'll start off their report, whatever report they're doing, with what's called an executive summary. And it basically summarizes their main findings. Sometimes it'll summarize their main proposals as well, or their recommendations. And so you can see that when I do reintegrating soldiers, United Nations, and executive summary, it drops down to 916. Now, it always says executive summary, so I put that in quotation marks, and then it dropped down to 817. It's still a lot, right? Still a lot, no question about it, but now you're getting down to a number that's like at least somewhat manageable. The next search, I introduced a new term. You can see where it says file type, and then colon, and then PDF. So what that's telling the Google machine to do is it wants it to look up anywhere on the internet where you can find the phrase reintegrating soldiers, United Nations, and executive summary, right? But you only want PDF files. Right, that's going to limit it to PDF files. Now, by the way, you don't have to just do PDF files. If for another class, you could do PPT, for PowerPoint, or you could do Doc or DocX. You could do any other kind of file that you want, but this will limit it to the kind of file that you're looking for. If you're looking for a video, you could put MPEG or something like that. If you're looking for photographs, you could do JPEG. So you can limit the file type any way you want to. So that brought it down to 529. Now, the next thing I did is I thought, okay, I've got executive summaries. I'm going to introduce another word into my search, recommendations, right? And so when I introduce the word recommendations, now I'm searching reintegrating child soldiers, right? United Nations, executive summary in quotation marks, all those in quotation marks, and recommendations, file type, PDF file. That only dropped it down 3. Like that wasn't it didn't clear out a lot of stuff. Right, which is a little disappointing because I really thought recommendations would be good. So I started thinking, like, what else could I use other than recommendations? What else could I use? I thought, okay, maybe because of this particular topic, maybe instead of using recommendations, people use the word proposals. And so if you look on the next search, reintegrating child soldiers, right? United Nations in quotation marks, executive summaries, proposals, and then file type PDF, and now it went down to 438. So it did go down, right? It was more effective. It narrowed it down a little bit. And then I was just curious, like, okay, what if I use recommendations instead of proposals? And it was 428, right? So it's like, okay, there's some weird interaction thing going on with proposals and recommendations. But so then I finally stuck on the final one. I thought, well, just since we're UNICEF, right? It's UNICEF. I'll just enter UNICEF, Reintegrating Child Soldiers, United Nations, Executive Summary, Recommendations. That brought it down to 428. But when I changed that recommendations and then changed it out to proposals, then all of a sudden it's down to 329. We started off with 26 million and we got down to 329. Now, past that point, the next thing you need to do is just go through, look through them and see which ones look like they might be useful. One of the things you can do is if you're representing a particular country, what you can do is you can enter all that stuff and all the same terms and put Colombia or put United States in quotation marks, or you can enter any other term that you want, your country, or if there's a particular event that you're interested in, or anything that would narrow it down, you can use that as well. If there's been, as you'll see when you do the research, there's some literature on socialization. So you may be able to put the word socialization in there as well. Let's say you're interested in particular women child soldiers, right, and how they're being reintegrated. You might put females or women or something like that. Just various terms, just paying attention to the fact that you're narrowing it down. Then, as you finally narrow down your number of hits, as you go through each of them, the first thing you want to do, you don't want to read them all. That's just a waste of time. You don't want to read them all. Presumably you've studied the topic a little bit, you know a little bit about it. Oh, if you see a PDF file, because you should only have PDF files, open it up, right? And immediately do Control F. Control F is how allows you to search for something. It's Control F is find. Look for a particular word in a document. So you can look for the word proposals, or you can look for the word recommendations, and you should be able to locate that and then start collecting. Read the recommendations and read the proposals for how these various agencies or whoever issued this report, what they recommended. And for now, what you can do is just be indiscriminate. Just collect a bunch of them, right? You may want to organize them based on whether they're primarily economic or whether they're primarily educational, whether they deal primarily with women, if they're focused in Africa or they're focused in South America, whatever it happens to be. But so you start organizing your proposals by whatever categorization you use. And then you can start thinking about them afterwards. Which ones work, which ones don't. But also, sometimes they can give you clues as to additional terms you can include into your search. This is how you go about doing good research. And then when you do your research binder, you can have your proposals and you can have other proposals too in there that you can refer back to, so you don't have to memorize all the proposals. But if somebody brings something up and you're thinking, oh man, I remember looking at something like that, you can go back to your research binder, look it up and see what it was. This is how strategy works. Narrow it down, make it so that you've got a manageable amount of information, and then start looking through it for the work that other people have done. If we do that, if everybody on the team does that, we are going to be as well researched as anybody else, because these are the techniques that I used writing my dissertation. This is PhD shit that I'm talking about. This is how I did my research. This is how other PhDs do their research, and now you can practice doing it on your own. Okay? And that'll do